Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Paul and Vince's excellent hobby adventure. As usual, we still don't have any money for songs or funding, so you just get us singing, as is what you would expect
I hear
from.
Tay Swift's gonna be on the next show.
What's that?
I hear Tay Swift's coming next week.
Well, yeah, obviously, we're gonna start bringing in the real talent sometime soon. I'm gonna actually get like a three-piece jazz band behind me, and they're just gonna like
We're gonna get that put on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're echoing.
Right now.
Well, when I talk, it echoes.
Uh-oh. Is it still doing it?
I don't know. I'm not talking. Yes, it is. You need to put it in your headset. Well, Paul's doing that. Mute yourself real quick. There you go.
How do we mute myself?
Oh, well, there you go. It's not echoing. Nope, it's echoing again. You're killing me. I'm going to mute you. There you go. All right. Well, while Paul's figuring that out and getting his headset so he can actually talk, I will start us off. So, thank you for joining us, everybody. This week on our hobby adventure, our challenge from last week was warm and cold. That's what we had come to. Last week's show, or I guess 3 weeks ago show, I shouldn't say week, we do these. Obviously, we missed last Friday, so this is actually 3 weeks delayed. I apologize for that. That happened because I was on the road and had to delay, so sorry about that. But we're back. We're excited to see the results of this challenge. So if you want to see last week's show where we set up this challenge, I will put the link in the description down below. We covered speed painting and the results of that challenge. And then we also talked a lot about airbrushes last week. So there was a whole big airbrushing thing, and that show has a ton of links. If you're interested in getting into airbrushing, that show, we cover all the basics, and we also included a bunch of links. So that was last week's, and at the end of last week's show, we set up our warm and cold challenge. Yes, so painting a single mini using both warm colors and cold colors, fire and ice, as it were. Generally something you want to avoid. You want to stick sort of mostly into the warm palette or mostly into the cold palette, but we were going to try to use both. So I guess off the bat, Paul, what did you think about this challenge? Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was interesting. I had in my head, like you just mentioned, trying to keep the colors separate. I was actually thinking about trying to do a dual piece where, like, one model was cold, one model was warm. Didn't end up working out that way. It was definitely interesting trying to integrate the warm and cold palette together. We'll see how I ended up doing it, and I think you did it a little bit different way. You actually popped out with your figure very, very quickly using some flame and stuff, so that's what I had in mind. I was actually going to paint a fire belly that I had laying around, but you did that very, very quickly, so I sort of changed pace and sort of did something a little bit different and did something not per se temperature hot and cold, but obviously those colors go the same way because they obviously came from somewhere, which is usually fire. But yeah, I kind of get my palette a little bit open, and I try to research a little color theory. Kind of depending on where you go to look at it, people will say what is warm and cold a little bit differently. On like some of the edges, obviously red, yellow, orange, warm. And then blues are cool, but when you get into the greens and the purples and things like that, you sort of get some weird in between things, and you kind of play with them and shift towards the yellow scale with the greens or shift towards the red scale with the purples, and they get warm and cool. So something that was sort of fun to play with, and sort of something I would suggest doing is, again, you can never have enough color study in trying to keep your miniatures wholly together. So that was a nice educational experience, I think. How about for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Researching this, just like looking at other people who've played with this same thing, was a lot of fun. One of the pictures we're going to look at is honestly my favorite picture I found in my research. A truly amazing piece. I don't remember who did it, but I'll try to hunt it up and properly credit them in the description. But it's exactly what you said, that some colors are very clearly warm or cold. But there's a lot of colors that can be either, especially when there are those transition colors that are made from two other colors. So the easy example is purple, right? Because purple is red and blue.
Yeah.
So that's a warm color and a cold color making one color. The more blue it is, right, the more, if it's a bluish purple, which we can all picture in our head, it's going to be cold. If it is a ruddy purple drifting toward magenta or something, it's going to get warm. And so just simple, like the ratios on the purple can also be determining whether it's warm or cold. And one of the more interesting things to me is white. Like white itself, most people don't think of white as being sort of like a very interesting color. I find white a fascinating color because it itself can very easily be both warm and cold, and it will be very, very different depending on the white you use and how appropriate it looks. So here's two whites. I don't know how easily this will come across there, but one of these is ivory, and one of these is white gray, right? And the ivory here is using sort of brown to get its color, like just a slight bit of brown. It's going in that direction, hence it's becoming a warmer white. The white gray is using gray, very cold, and it's becoming a cold white. And how you use the two, the warm white will tend to look dirtier, more sort of like rough. Cold white will tend to look more clean. So if you think of like a science fiction movie, this is a science fiction movie white. This is a fantasy movie white, right? Some person in the desert wearing a white outfit. Their outfit starts looking like this and then worse, right? So warm and cold, even in one color. So yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I did rip the fig out fairly quickly. I think I honestly started on it about 10 minutes after we cut the show last time, just because I knew I was going to be traveling and wasn't.
Yeah, you were cutting out pretty quick right after, so you didn't really have time.
Yeah.
Which I don't blame for you, but you posted it up, and I was kind of like, oh, well, I don't want to do the same thing, so I guess we'll do something different.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No thunder to steal. It was all in the brainstorming phase, so it's not like I painted half the fig and was like, God damn it.
Yeah, see, so it's good that I posted it that fast. I helped you. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
It's my fault we're delayed a week, right?
Well, obviously, I mean, you weren't available on Monday. Never mind the fact that I wasn't available on Friday. Well, you stepped away. I took full blame for not doing the show on time, just so you know.
Good.
All right, so you want to look at the results of the challenge?
Let's do it.
All right. Let me screen share here. All right. Can you see that image?
This one. I love this Chaos Lord.
Yes, this is obviously the Chaos Lord that you had painted. You didn't paint this mini, like this picture that's on here. Oh yeah, no kidding. But you, like the actual mini, you had done this as part of the non-metallic metal challenge.
Correct.
And this is a great mini. I love this guy. And when I was searching around for warm and cold, I found this guy. Like I said, I'll try to find who actually did this to properly credit them. But this is truly just one of the most amazing minis I have ever seen painted. This is just such fantastic work. And if there was ever a fig that matched warm and cold, holy crap. This is it.
I have to say, Vince, this actually, when we started the show and this challenge was up there, this was the figure that I was actually looking at when I came up with it. Vince and I have both found this totally independently. I don't believe, as far as I recall, we ever talked about this mini before, but this was actually at the very beginning, in the inception of the show, this was the mini I was looking at when I thought of that challenge.
Yeah, this is so amazing. And what's great about this is it really shows, like, obviously this is a huge amount of OSL as well as the warm and cold. Like this is OSL on 11. And you see that what you need to make this effect really pop is the super deep dark shadows contrasted against the super high highlights, right? Like if you look at these horns, there is black right here and then this white at the edge of the horn ridges, right? I mean, it's just he's making these incredible contrast transitions in the red. And he's doing it down here in the cold as well with this very dark black in the cape and in the shadows under the blue, and then going up to this like almost white blue here on the very edges.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very beautiful piece, and there's obviously 2 points. I mean, the point that you draw into is a flame on the head, and then the blade itself, which are both the warmest pinnacle points, and then it just kind of radiates down, and it's really nice because it glows right on the top of the armor, and then the deep coolness of both the base and the bottom. It's just it really comes alive.
So full kudos to this painter. I will, like I said, I will absolutely credit them appropriately in the description. If you remember who did a poll and you want to hit me with it afterward, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll dig it up. No big deal. But yes, it is funny we both came to this independently because it is a freaking masterpiece. That is the reality.
Yeah, it's beautiful. If I remember correctly or not, it was like a 9 something on coolminior.com, which means, you know, better than Golden Demon usually, or Golden Demon.
Yep, absolutely. Now let's look at our work that isn't this good. No offense to you, but I certainly would.
I'm fully admitting that I can't do that.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. We have your dwarven. Is he? What is he? Is he a rune lord or something?
Rune Lord.
All right.
Okay. God forbid he's on round.
He is on a round. Are you just like pre-ninthing it? Is that what you're doing here?
I decided. I mean, I might not even like use this guy, so just take him on a round, see what happens.
Sure. All right. So walk us through it, man. Take us through it.
So I went a little differently, right? I mean, like we just talked about in that figure, warm and cold. He took that contrast to like a bajillion. And warm and cold can mean a lot of things, right? You know, you get warm and cold emotions, you get warm and cold colors. You know, you get kind of like sort of this good versus evil, you know, counterbalances, yin and yang kind of thing. And sort of after seeing your hot and cold on your mini, I decided to try and go with the dark, damp, cool of the base versus the lively warmth of the dwarf figure itself. So I tried to make it so that the actual dwarf model, in particular the cape, obviously, which is the very warmest color, very, very, you know, warm and alive, and then the base itself very cool, damp, and dark. And I also tried to put some pretty heavy contrast onto the dwarf itself. A lot of my golds were done a little bit more purpley in the recesses, more so than brown, which I normally do. The gems are a nice purple to try and give a little bit of cool color to sort of tie in with the base. If you kind of just zoom around, it's sort of a similar thing. I mean, it's a small model. There's not a whole lot on there. So I tried a little freehand work. I don't know if anyone was following on the chest piece. You'll notice that the chest piece is nicely below his giant beard. So I spent about 2 or 3 hours doing some filigree chest armor that actually came out pretty nicely, I thought, and then covered it with a beard. So that was a little disappointing. I was a little upset about that. But I also actually, with the armor, I did some non-metallic armor again, but I actually didn't do the standard grayscale. What I did was I sort of went with the some paints I picked up to do non-metallic metal, and then actually over that I sort of did a bone white color to sort of liven it up a little bit instead of making it I thought that would kind of warm it up a little bit, kind of like you said with the off-white. I tried to make it more, a little bit warmer, a little bit different, a little bit livelier. So that was really where I took the challenge. What are your thoughts?
That's good. And for everybody who when you were just explaining this and was probably looking at your face and not the fig, since I forgot to lock the screen, one of these days I'm going to remember that right away. I did get it midway through there, but hopefully now everybody is seeing it. I'm sorry, everybody. You can fully blame me. It is my fault. I am stupid. But this is like really great. I mean, your color blending here is so smooth. I've got many questions. So here's my first question. I assume the braided rope work on the interior of the cape, is that freehand?
That's actually a sculpted part of the dwarf. I would have done something like that with the cape, but it's part of the mold. Really?
That's kind of cool. So the interior of his cloak actually has that in there?
That's actually ridges. Yeah, it was actually honestly more of a pain in the ass than freehanding because you had to kind of get up in there. It wasn't possible to keep this dwarf separate, so it would have had big mold lines if I kept it separate and painted it separately. So that was actually kind of a pain in the ass to get in there after the fact and sort of paint in there.
Gotcha. The blending on your color work there is fantastic. Like the blending, especially on the cloak, is really good. So that's just like, it's very smooth transitions. Your armor very smooth. I noticed you kept the armor lighter. Was that an intentional choice? Like
That
is
was
the same.
intentional. That's what
Okay.
that's what I was getting towards with what I was saying is I actually overlaid bone white instead of regular white and made the whole thing a lot lighter. So like I actually did my normal heavy contrast of non-metallic metal, and then I actually did glazing of bone white to just lighten up the whole thing.
Now, did you do that just to kind of neutralize out the piece? Was that like a bid toward neutrality, basically?
Yeah, yeah, kind of just sort of. I didn't really want anything dark and menacing. Sort of even the metallic contrast. I didn't really want dark and menacing on the dwarf. I really wanted it to be very light.
Gotcha. We're gonna come back. I think we should absolutely come back because I want to know about your base. And this week we're gonna talk about basing. And so I think that it would be great to come back and talk about this base. Is this like a custom base, or did you, like, that is to say, is it like a pre-bought base, or did you build this from scratch?
No, I built that whole thing.
Okay. So I think we should definitely talk about that during the basing challenge, or the basing challenge. I'm sorry, during the basing discussion. Just because I think it's a neat. This is more than a unit thing. Our focus is going to primarily today in bases be on making unit bases, and this one's very special. And very definitely more character oriented base, but I think there's probably some lessons here.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that whole thing is not something that's beyond complicated. The freehand was definitely a lot more work there, but the actual base assembly, besides that top stonework part, is pretty simple to do.
Very good. Yeah, and I assume all these color rune and stuff on here, that's all freehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks great. Your skin work here is really fantastic too. Whoops. Like on his hand. Like this is really good. Right in here.
Yeah.
Just really, really great work. Good gem work. Obviously, gems is on our list of potential future challenges. So that'll be interesting if we ever come to that. I think he's great. I love the blue of the mushrooms and the runes contrasting against the red or orange. Now, you're going very orange on the cape. Was that also a very intentional choice as opposed to, say, making it more of like a ruddy, brownish red, right? You went very orange red.
I really wanted that to be the, hey, I'm here kind of aspect of the model. Like, I tried to really lighten up the gold on the top of the staff to give that some light, and then also the cape I really wanted to be orangish yellow, and that actually was totally done. Again, we talked about this before. Layering red is very forgiving, so I actually just kind of put down some shadows, glazes, and then did almost straight yellow over the top, and then glazed again with some more red, and sort of just built this orange, yellowy highlight on there. So that's sort of what I went with, and that makes it obviously much more warmer and vibrant than other ruddy reds.
Right. Yeah, it is a very, very bright red. Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, he's great. I don't know if there's anything else I would ask you about on him. I think he looks fantastic. I really like the composition of the piece. Did you purposely kind of put him off to the back of the base just because of the necessity of how you wanted to do the cold on the base?
Yeah. So obviously I had to do the freehand of the base separately from the model. And so, doing those things planning wise, he actually fits very, very nicely. He's right on the edge of that rock piece. So I just want to make sure that, you could see some of the work done on the base and didn't just sort of give that away. Obviously, this was after the fact. I just covered up a whole bunch of work on the chest plate, so I was going to make sure that didn't happen yet again.
Right, you put him dead in the middle of the base. Can't see any of the runes either.
Yeah,
this is the thing of wasted time.
I kind of did that. And that's actually, I think that's the rune of what's the main character, Karak, or whatever the main city. Just look up some rune pieces and sort of did that, and I thought that was just a nice tie into the base, sort of, ruined foundation of a dwarf hold. He's going down there. So
you want to walk us through exactly what you did with the free hit, like, because the rune effect there looks really good. Why don't you walk us through what you did for that rune effect?
So that rune effect, it's actually really, really simple in terms of what I did. All I did was I took this here, actually I have it right here. I picked this up at a local.
They're not looking at you right now. Now I have it properly locked, so remember they can't see you.
They can't see me even in the bottom corner?
No, because they'll just see my screen right now.
Oh, okay.
Do I need to flip back to you?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I can just describe it. Basically, at local Michaels or something, it was just a little plastic sheet that just has, geometric shapes on it. Your circles, your squares, whatever. And all I did was I took this piece of corkboard, and then I used some fill-in primer and stuff like that to make a very nice flat, smooth surface. And then I looked up something, Celtic knot-like and dwarf-like. So I made the circle on there with my micro pen. And then I sort of traced out this rune a couple times in my drawing book. And if you're into freehanding or painting a whole lot, I would strongly suggest getting a sketchbook so you can try these things out before you actually try and do it on the model. And that's what I did. I just tried it out a few times, and I built this rune with just the micro pen. And then I came back through and I actually started glazing over the top of that just so you can see the shadow underneath. And then I started using paints and sort of repainted the rune in white, glazed a bunch more times in terms of just very light grays over the top, so I can still see basically just having see what the sketch is below. Then I did white over the top, and then I did a glaze of a very light blue so that you could just see the etching work below. And then on his left foot, you can't really see it from the picture, but there's actually stonework, square stonework under his. Oh, that would be his right foot, off to the left side of the circle there.
Yeah, I think you can just see like one of the cracked stone, like where the two cobblestones come together there.
Yeah. And so I did sort of a similar thing there to make it look like it was worked stone, sort of eroding away. But yeah, it was fairly simple in terms of that. I did this with an airbrush. It could easily be done with a regular brush, just keeping the glazes light. And you can do the hard sketching with the micro pen and then sort of build it up after that, so it doesn't look like you did it with a micro pen instead of just sketching black onto a surface. Makes it look like you try to paint it on instead of just sketching it on.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've done the same. Like that was a very common thing I did with my Bretonnians with freehanding them. You start with the micro pen just to sketch out the design, and then you end up painting over it completely, right? But it's much easier to draw a line with a pen than with a paintbrush.
Oh, absolutely. I would strongly recommend if you have to do anything with rigid lines or any sort of drawing, like rough objects, use a micro pen. Don't try and do that with a brush. It's way too difficult.
Yep.
And there's one surgeon's hand.
Sure. Yeah, I do not. There's one little minor thing you did here that I want to point out to people, because it's something your brain sees and your brain really likes, but you might not even consciously be aware of it. So not you personally, Paul, like people who are looking at it. You are general audience members. So you can see where the rune comes down here, and then it doubles back on itself. And what you did here is you recreated this dark line on each side. So it looks like this piece, the triangle, goes over top of this other one by having these sort of lines right here, this darkness on each side of the line, right? And I assume you actually just, after you did all this, you either didn't paint white here or you took the darker color and kind of glazed over a little bit after doing the line, something like that, right?
Yeah, I just didn't paint white there.
Yep, exactly. This little thing here of having this negative space in between your line, if you think about a Celtic knot, and one of the reasons it looks so cool is because it creates that 3D illusion by having these negative spaces. So Celtic knots are very famous for this. They have these intricate patterns of line and negative space. Doing that in your actual freehand work is really easy. Like even if you Paul has done a fantastic job here of this very nuanced glowing rune. But even if you're just doing some freehand Celtic knots, once you draw your whole pattern, just go through and take whatever your color is underneath, and with a thin glaze, just trace along the side of the line and make it blend in just a little bit more into the undercolor. So you're kind of creating this shadow effect. It's super easy and quick, and it will take what looks like some squiggles and lines and turn it into this beautiful Celtic knot just that fast and easy. It's a very little thing, but it's something your brain really likes because it creates that three-dimensional image. So great work. All right. Anything else you want to say here about our Rune Lord? Ready to?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready to move on there.
Ready to defend the Dwarven holds. All right. Very good. Yeah, I love it. Really, really good piece, man. Just fantastic.
I was actually, I was pretty happy. So I think as a whole, I was really happy how the piece turned out. I don't know how I felt about the warm cold challenge. I think I achieved maybe what I was trying to do, but in my mind conceptually, I thought it would be a little bit more dramatic. So the pieces itself, I'm very happy with, but as for the challenge, I don't know if I really nailed the challenge per se. But that's just my personal opinion.
All right. Oh, one final question. Where'd the mushrooms come from?
So I've green stuffed a bunch. These were actually metal ones that I bought from somewhere.
Gotcha. I thought maybe they came out of like some orc and goblin kits because I know some of those come with mushrooms too.
Yeah, there's a couple GW kits that does it, but I mean, I got this giant bag that had various sizes from ginormous to the size, basically the size of that dwarf, down to little ones, and I think there was probably 50 or 60 in there, and I got them for I don't know $40 or something tops.
Nice.
I really needed them for my display board for my Skaven, but it ended up as just being basing particles.
Well, they look good. I like them. I like your frosty mushroom caps. They look cold. That's what they should look like. All right. Good stuff. So here's mine. And there's one minor thing I really hate about this, and we'll get to it. I'll talk about it. But there's one minor thing that really bugs the bejesus out of me in retrospect, looking at this now, and I'll go back and fix it. But it really bothers me to no end. So this is the Bretonnian damsel on foot, and she is obviously the way that I took the warm and cold was to do the fire and kind of the ice of the scepter here, or birdie scepter. And so we've got the fire sword that I just clipped off her hand, and the fire sword is out of the Empire Wizard kit. And it's funny the different size between the generations, because when you look close and you look like her hand is actually way too big. Like, that's terribly modeled. If you look at how big the thumb is, I noticed that, but it's whatever. I mean, it's fine. You don't notice it from a distance at all, but it's a little thing that gets under my skin. Also, why is the fire going down? Like,
She's swinging it up.
Yeah, that's actually like, even the real wizard is holding it that way.
Yeah.
So like, that just seems like GW modeled that in a weird way, but hey, whatever. Maybe she's swinging in an upward arc. So what I thought was I wanted to really show off the warm and cold. And so I thought, well, I need something in the middle that will really like reflect and capture that warm and cold. And so that's why I came to the damsel. And I thought if I put her in a white dress, I could play with having one side of the white be the cold white and sort of reflect the blues, and one side be the warm white and reflect the yellows, right? Because as I said sort of at the top of the show, white can do both things. It can be warm and cold. So, and that's kind of what I went for here. So this is looking at her from this side, it's the warm side of the fig, right? So we can see where the fire is there, and it's pretty standard fire effect. I don't think I knocked the socks off of anybody there with that. Nothing too amazing. Pretty standard fire, sort of whitish yellow, whitish yellow down to a red. And I never like doing actual dark black on living fire, right? Where you don't have something solid, because like living fire never turns black, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And then obviously that's casting this big light down on her dress, and you can see it turning yellow here, as well as the left side of her face, her hair, and then this side of this side of her chest is reflecting the yellow, right? And so then if we go to, there's the other, you can see it catching on the ridges there of the dress.
Yeah.
Oops. And if we go to this side, then you can see the blue and it catching on the arm and shining down, and then turning her hair purple, because if blue light were to shine on red hair, what you would get is actually like a very purplish tint, right? Because that's what's going to happen to that red hair. In the same way that over here, we get really more of an orange glow to the hair than it does become like white or yellow or anything like that. And similarly, I don't know if it's actually right on the first picture. Oops. You can see that the blue light's even reflecting all the way down here, the side of her face, and then down on this side of her chest.
So I really dig. I don't think this front picture really captures what you did. When you walk through the two side pictures, I really got it, and it really looks great. I mean, it looks really, really good. I think you nailed, the warm side and the cold side. I just don't think this front picture is actually just doing your work justice, to be honest. I didn't really notice that when I first looked at the picture. I think that's just a picture issue more so than anything. So I think that I have more appreciation for what you did on this piece now that you sort of walk through the side angles and such with me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it really is like it's when you see the contrast of like one side versus the other, right? I think is where it really actually comes
Yeah,
together.
so like this one and that other angle there, I think really nail with like the hair and stuff on this side. Yeah, I mean, I really like the piece. I think you did a great job with that symmetry right down the middle and hitting all the object source lighting and tinting coming off there. It's very nice.
And now let me tell you the thing that bothers the bejesus out of me that I think I've already fixed it, but I didn't do it in this picture. And that is that I decided to keep the square of the bottom of the base brown. How gaudy and eye attracting is just that paint around the bottom of the base?
Yeah, so I I noticed that too, and I was like, I don't think Vince normally does that. Like, it's really kind of funny that just like painting that black, I think, really just tightens it up. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. So that's got to be like, if I didn't already fix that, which I think I did, I need to fix that. It's just the funny little things of like how one little minor thing like that can just throw off the aesthetic for the whole thing. So that will be fixed, ladies and gentlemen, I promise. As I said, I was in a very much hurry. I had like 2 days to get this done before I was, basically getting ready to get on the road. So that was not so I had to work quick. But now looking at it, it just like jumps out at me with that brown. I'm like, ah.
So I do have one critique, and this is a general critique. It's not really anything you did. It's just my personal opinion.
Yes, hit me.
You did object source lighting very nicely on both sides. What I find distracting in sort of the overall atmosphere of the piece is I personally think it's strange when people do object source lighting mixed with what seems like a daytime very bright base, because to me that base looks like I'm walking down a mountain, the sun is shining, and triumphantly riding into the sunrise or something, or midday into battle. And if you think about how bright both that sword or staff would have to be to actually to tint those things in the middle of the day, I find sometimes when you're just looking at a piece solo, it sort of suspends disbelief, or would that be correct?
It breaks your suspension of disbelief. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is a great call, because really what should be happening is some of this yellow should be casted, like the rock should have very deep shadows, right? That's number one. Like this should be way darker. And it should be, and basically the only light cast upon this rock to change it from being like a very dark gray should be the yellow that's being cast from the sword down here. And these highlights should really be pretty much yellow or orange. And then the same thing on the flip side. The flip side should be darker.
Yeah, even darker,
still.
and make it just very light blues
Yep.
on that side.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion when it comes to object source lighting. I don't think that was the direct focus of the task, but I figured I would touch on that while we were talking about it. And I think you, like I said, I think you nailed the atmosphere of warm and cold from both sides there. So great job on that. But that's just my personal opinion in general for object source lighting.
You're
darker the
100%
atmosphere, the
correct.
better.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And it's the kind of thing where like oftentimes I know exactly what happened. That's a great thing to think about. Obviously, I did not paint the fig on the base, right?
Yeah.
Like I was sitting there with it on a painting stick and painting her. And then once she was all done, I set her to the side and I put the base together separately and didn't really think much about it. I made her a nice little custom, scenic base, and had some moss and grass and flowers and weeds and rocks and crap. Just all the normal junk you throw in bases.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't really even think about, hey, that's all cute and all, but what about the lighting on your piece, right? And just assumed the base has the lighting of a standard daytime lit setup, but she does not.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about aligning those two. So that's really a great catch. And you're absolutely right.
But overall, I think it's a very fun and nice piece. So even fixing that if you wanted to is not a very difficult task.
Yeah, I think you could really just wash down the rock with
Yeah.
a lot of like deep black, right?
Yeah.
And then just highlight over, dry brush over like some sort of a heavy opaque gold color, and then just take like some light yellow white over that, and you'd
Yeah.
probably be good to go. Yep. All right. So there you go. That's the warm and cold. I love red hair. And just as an aside, like many of my damsels have red hair. Red hair is like the most fun color hair to paint because
Oh yeah.
it has so many different hues and colors trapped within it. It reflects the light in really interesting ways.
Like the Slayer orange hair is what I like love painting. Is that very nice reddish brown up to all the way even to the blondish part of the highlights.
Yeah.
You can get some very very nice color contrast in that hair. It's much better than whites or browns where it's just like black strip, white strip, like.
Right. Yep, exactly. So yes, most of my damsels are gingers, I guess. I don't think they're soulless though. I'd like to think they all have a soul.
They're all nice on the inside.
Yes, absolutely. So there we go. That's warm and cold, folks. Hope you like it. Hope that there was some interesting things to say that you found when doing that. Obviously, it's a lot of fun to use these color combinations together. They can be great for contrast, as we'll return back to this fig one more time just to show like the masterpiece that it is and how great contrast can just make a fig pop. So it really is. I think that's my sort of there we go. There we go. We're back. So I think that's my ultimate feeling about it, is that using that contrast is a great way to really create a lot of really great high contrast to the fig and really make it pop up off the table. It will grab the eye. It's a really great thing to do with like characters and stuff like that. But it's not, I do not think it's coincidence that both of us picked characters to do, right?
Yeah.
Because you want them to stand out from the unit that surrounds them.
Certainly.
And that's a great way to do it with that high contrast. All right. So that brings us to anything else to say about hot and cold before we move on?
No, other than I think it's sort of similar to it's a similar concept for me, at least education wise, that it was like the non-metallic metal. You may not be painting a warm or cold piece, but it really teaches you a fair amount about tying some colors together, like we're playing with the color, the reflection on the hair, or things like that, where you can really apply things to just other minis. And I think this is not going to be used throughout your entire army, right? This is usually a single figure kind of deal, but it teaches you an aspect of painting that you can use in other things.
Absolutely agreed. Yep. All right, very good. So let's move on to our tip of the week. Tip of the week. All right. So our tip of the week, we want to talk about basing, specifically like unit basing more than character basing, because basing is a big old thing. And doing a big monster or a big character where you're doing sort of scenic basing is a little different than doing, say clan rat basing, right? Or something like that, to give the most extreme example, perhaps. So when you're looking at making bases for your stock standard troops, what are your guidelines, your principles? What are the materials you use and so on and so forth? Why don't you walk us through your feelings on it?
So my opinion is usually the best looking is keep it simple and consistent. Usually the two known are, the sort of flock or tufts. I think tufts of grass actually look way better than flock, in my opinion. And these are basically usually just pre-sold packages of Army Painter or whatever. They're just little strands that are pre-painted that kind of come out that look like little tufts of grass. And you mix that with, whatever, exactly, perfect right there. You mix that with whatever, texturing method you want on the base and sort of get a springtime / summertime, just standard battlefield affair. The other route is usually rocky. That's a very simple one to do. Do your sort of grayish. It's a little bit more dull. I think it works well with some brighter colors, your demons and stuff like that, where the base is done and completed and looks well, and it complements and makes the actual figure that's very bright pop out. The other thing I like is snow. Snow is very very simple to do once you figure out how to do it, and you can usually put that over rock or even the same sort of gravel thing, and it just adds a little extra dimension. Those are usually the three that I think are simplest to do in terms of army wide and do it yourself.
So let's get into that a little more. I agree with you. So you said, with the grass and stuff like that. And do you when you use grass, do you use like mud or something like that on there as well to get like some dirt where it's missing grass?
Yeah, absolutely. I would not. I would not flock the whole base. I would not use tufts all over the place. Additional things like usually what I do is do a small variety. Pick 4 things. I'm going to put tufts on here. I'm going to put small size rocks on here, and then maybe one other thing on occasion. The couple bones or something that throughout the whole unit. A unit's level. Maybe you put it on 10 bases out of 40, so that they're there and it's kind of consistent. But usually you'll cover the whole base in texture. And that by texture, I mean usually what I do is just take some Elmer's glue and then mix up some sort of mixture of usually different size particles. Usually I do sand, coffee ground, and maybe some rocks or something you get out, and you kind of mix that in a bag and you sort of just cover your base in Elmer's glue and then just dip it in there, wherever you want it to stick. And then you can go ahead and paint that up very easily with a dry brush and a wash, and it will look basically like dirt. And then just stick some tufts around that or any other little bits. If you're talking about plastic bits and you want to kind of be buried, usually you stick them to the base before you put on your texture. Tufts over the top, and that sort of gives you a very nice look about a base. It's very simple to do.
Yeah, my best friend, and what I would certainly recommend to anybody who is looking for it, is this guy right here. There's a whole line of these. This is from Vallejo. This one's Dark Earth. I happen to like this one. You can paint over these easy enough. I happen to like Dark Earth. I just happen to like the very, very gritty texture of it. They also make like a desert sand and a snow and a light earth and all sorts of different colors and different levels of texture and grit and all that kind of stuff. So, and this is I got this for $11, and this will last you for many armies. I use this on every single base, more or less, that I do, and I bet it is still easily half full. And I have used a lot of this.
So good purchase.
Yeah, like this will last you if you're not painting entire armies in 3 months like I do. This will last you forever as long as you keep it nicely.
Yeah, probably dry out before you use the whole thing.
Right, exactly. So I couldn't recommend. I think that's one of the key with purchasing base stuff. It's easy when people go to the store to look at it and go, oh man, $6, $7, $8, $13 for some basing material. I don't know if I want to spend that. Okay, here's what you need to think about that. Spend the money. And let me tell you why. You don't need to buy it all at once. Every time you go to the store and you're going to buy something, just throw one little thing on there. Because I have been using like the little grass stuffs you mentioned, like little dark, I particularly like the burnt grass stuffs or whatever, the brown ones that look like kind of fall. I use those all over the place because you can paint them very easily other colors, right? So I'll dry brush them white, or I'll dry brush them green, or whatever the case. Mm-hmm. I finally used the first package of those that I bought almost a year ago. And again, so that one lasted me, just dozens and dozens and dozens of figs, right? So when you just kind of pick it up slowly over time, you build up a library of it. Like I have a thing here you can't see that's just full of basing junk. Just stuff I use for basing. Different color, little rocks. There's my like charcoal black rocks, and I have little white rocks and grasses and stuff like that. As well, everybody's favorite best friend, which is little bits of cork.
Yeah.
See them in there?
So that's the other thing I was going to suggest. Get yourself some cork board. I'm a recent convert to this, but cork board is really convenient. It's very cheap, and like you said, on orders $5-10, and you can just kind of rip it apart and make yourself some stuff. It does need a little bit of texturing, but it adds some height and depth to sort of what you put on the base. That is what I used for that dwarf base. It's very easy to use, and certainly a cheap, easy thing to get a hold of at Michael's or wherever.
Yep.
One thing I would suggest checking out is there's a lot of non, war game sort of products out there. Like this place called Mini Nature, which is Mini Natur. And it has a lot of those tufts. It has tufts that look like flowers. It has all sorts of stuff. So you're looking for spring themes. You're looking for oriental themes. And this is like miniature train scenery diorama stuff. So, you know, Woodland Scenics makes a ton of stuff that's great. And all the other thing, like you mentioned, is these things are, you know, expensive in terms of $15, but they're also on the scale of making an entire diorama, which we don't make. So, you know, anything you buy from Woodland Scenics is going to last you for friggin' ever. I mean, that tub of snow that I got from Woodland Scenics, I used base an entire ogre army basically, and I was using it as a paste. So I was using tons of it with Elmer's glue, and it lasted the entire army, and that was $20, $15. So certainly on the order of what you're paying for the miniature, don't skimp on the basing stuff.
And if you want cheap snow, if you really want the cheapest snow, you can use my favorite snow recipe, which is baking soda. Just steal some baking soda from your significant other, your wife, or whatever. Or if you happen to have some baking soda of your own, some little baking soda, water, and Elmer's glue, and mix it until it's basically the consistency of like slightly wet toothpaste. And you can make snow. It'll spread around, very liquidy. It will run, so you've got if you make it too wet. So make sure you like scrape it or clean it if it runs down the side of your base afterward. Otherwise, it will look very weird. And that's a nice, fun little way to do snow. My wife also gave me, I don't know if I have it where it's at in my little basing thing. I don't know exactly where it is, but somewhere in there. But she also gave me a little jar of her craft glue glitter, which I will then mix a little bit into the snow, and that then makes the snow glittery, right?
Oh.
Like just a little bit, like it'll just catch the light when you turn the base. It doesn't actually look glittery normal, but when you rotate the fig, it will catch that light just in like little bit pieces here and there, and I mix a little bit in. Because that's what, if you look at snow, it doesn't reflect normally, but when you walk by snow and you're moving, you'll see those little like, where a little crystal is getting caught in the sun or something.
Very nice.
So that's exactly the same thing. Like go to Michael's or Joann Fabrics or some store like that and just walk around and look at the craft stuff. I mean, the reality is that stuff is all going to be cheaper than buying a war game like branded or labeled product, because that's marked up to sell to us. The stuff that's in that store is going to be cheap. You can find a lot of neat other options and things in just stores like that.
Absolutely. And just for an example of corkboard, I actually just have this sitting around. See if you can kind of see if I'm just sort of. You can also texture the top of that with some colors and such. And usually what I do is kind of flatten it out. And you can just add you know, freehand or just simple geometric shapes, make it sort of ruined stonework or whatever you want. I mean, and that was very, very easy. That's literally just ripped up pieces of corkboard with some gravel around the sides, dry brushed some stone colors with some little bit of airbrush stone colors. Again, it doesn't need to be airbrushed. And you can get something that's a rocky effect or a stonework effect. Very, very cheap, very, very easy, and you can do that for a whole army.
Yep. Yeah, when you got that cork and you rip it, so like here's my big piece of cork that I have a bunch more of these, but you know, I tear little pieces off of. And you notice it's like very flat, right? Of course, on one side. So what you can do is you can either just pit it, like take something sharp, take your hobby tool and stab into it a bunch when you have your ripped piece to create pittings. Or you can just take your mud or whatever like I had and just spread it over the top and create little things like that. So then it will look rough all around. Once that dries and you paint over it, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference between what was the cork and what's the rough edge of the cork and what's the mud gritty top that's on there. So you know, it becomes very easy. You don't need that smooth surface if you don't want it. At the same time, you could take like a epoxy or a putty or something like that, smooth out the top and create a nice smooth surface if you want to go for a stone floor. So it really goes either way very easily.
So what I've done on those, it seems to work okay. It's not going to give you a freaking, you know, piece of glass flat surface, but there's actually a couple gap filling primers that are perfectly great to use on bases that you can just shoot from the top and sort of gap fill the top in. Or I actually just take some of my Vallejo surface primer, and I actually just put a droplet on top of the corkboard so that it fills in the recesses. It's obviously a much heavier coat than you would ever normally use on anything, but that just sort of fills in the recesses and gives you sort of a nice flat surface on the top and gets rid of those little particle cracks.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, and I think, when it comes to it, I think one of the most important things that you said when you're across a unit is consistency, right? So let's return back to our golden rule of painting for, tournaments and scoring and stuff, which is, bases, faces, shields, and banners, right? And what's the first thing we said there? Bases, right? So I think consistency in your basing theme. When you think about your army, you think about how are these people going to be based? Like what is the terrain they're walking over, right? And I think that you can, if you make it somewhat appropriate to the army, I'm not saying you couldn't do something weird. Like it's not that you couldn't have Bretonnian knights charging across lava or something like that. It's just a bit strange. I think that's going to be jarring. Whereas if you have them charging across like sunny meadow, with grass and rock or something like that, something about that's going to jive. With my Skaven, I have all cold gray rocks and lichen and mosses, right, and stuff like that. So it's like underground rocky bits. Yeah, what you would expect them to be walking on: dirty, scrabbly, gray ground covered in moss and lichen and crap, right? You mentioned coffee grounds as well as one of your unusual basing materials. I like that one. I like that one very much. What other unusual, like sort of household basing materials you come across? Anything else you've used?
I'm trying to remember. I've used several things. I was in the snow base for a while. I used actually in my old house before I moved out here. There was some of the brick wall was sort of falling apart, and the brick gave off nice shards of things where it was like perfect slate. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find that again, but it was sort of a situational thing. Other than that, I think that people use some weird wood polishing thing for glosses on bases because you can get it a little bit cheaper. There's definitely some tips and tricks around for you to grab. But
so here's a couple for me. I don't know if you can see these. You can see that, and that one, and this one. Okay, so what are those? Those are tea.
Oh, nice.
So like tea, herbs, spices, all that kind of things. Don't worry, the herbs and spices don't rot. It's the whole point of the thing. I be careful with spices because holy crap, there are expensive spices out there in the world. So don't raid the spice cabinet and steal like the $20 Sri Lankan cinnamon or something. That's going to be a bad way to go. But like tea, I mean, it's really cheap, right? I mean, like you could just buy crappy tea. It doesn't need to be expensive tea, and it has lots of big. I don't know if you can really see this. I'll probably dump it everywhere if I open it, but let me get it open here. Like, you can see the very much different sized chunks in there, right? And so that's something I very much value. You can mix that together. That goes from like both very teeny tiny little pieces up to like these big flat, almost like wood chunks and stuff. Glue all that down, prime over it, paint over it, or leave them even how they are. If you really have a weird appropriate base that would be right for. It can be a great way to do like woodland type scenery, right? Tall
that's the other thing that I just forgot about that. Bark.
Yep.
Bark, actual wood outside, wood chips like for mulch. All those things make really great. Actually, rocks usually, depending on the type of bark you can grab. The thing I would suggest, you do grab it actually from outside or whatever. I just bake it for a minute to get all the moisture out, and then once you seal it with paint and enough coats, it's going to be fine. So bake it for a little while, get the moisture out, and then seal it with paint, and it'll be good to go. Won't rot or anything.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, bark is a great one. And the funny thing is, if you take a chunk of bark and paint it in any kind of stonish color, it immediately looks like a rock. Like it's you don't even realize how close it is until you do it the first time, and you're like, oh, that's a rock, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's wood. Yeah, so let me see. I think that the other thing is I like standing. It's fun to stand a couple of your figs up on a higher thing. One of the things that's interesting about models in a unit is that they all tend to be horizontal or vertically, I should say, about the same height, which can make them all kind of be very samey. So it's fun to use cork and stuff like that on just a couple of the individual ones. So like with my Skaven, one in every like 6 or 7 Skaven is on a big rock or 2 big rocks, right? So there's like just a little bit of height variation. I mean, it's not like one is, this much taller than the other one. It's more just to create a tiny amount of variation in the height of them, right? Because obviously if you had 100 people marching together,
They're not all walking on flat ground.
right, and they're not all the exact same height. Not every Skaven ever born is exactly 5'3", right, or whatever Skaven happened to be. There are height variations amongst individual people, and so like you can use basing material to create that illusion within your units, and very quick and easy. Because like I said, if you're doing a unit of 50, you only need to do 6, 7 guys on a couple rocks, a rock or two of differing heights, to make that illusion happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's just little minor things like that can really spice it up. Now, here's the question. When you're dealing with unit basing, Paul, what's your order of assembly and painting? So this is for standard units, not something display, not a scenic base for a character. How do you do it when you're talking about, you've done Skaven, I've done Skaven, you've got 50 clan rats sitting up ahead of you. How are you tackling these guys when it comes to their basing? Just order of operations.
Honestly, on something that is majority-wise covering the base, something like Skaven or 50 Skaven. Obviously, my other main army was ogres, and there's a lot more base room on there, so you got to pay a little more attention. Skaven, you can honestly get away with just like, I paint the whole fig, and then dip it in some of the texturing material for both sides of the base. Paint it down some muddy colors, and then put a tuft or two or whatever, or your lichen or whatever you want to do on your Skaven, and then call it good. Don't waste your time. This is probably the first time I'm going to tell you. Don't waste your time doing something that's not going to get noticed. In terms of, if you're talking about a single Skaven clan rat, what people are going to notice is the overall consistency, like we've been saying the whole time, of the whole unit. Don't waste time on an individual base. Make that base part of a whole thing. Make it like a mosaic, in terms of, this base may not look great by itself, but you put this whole unit together, and that looks like a battlefield. That looks like something that was put together well, right? Add some little extras on this one or that one, or like you said, changing variation of heights. I wouldn't worry about the individual one too much in a unit of something like 50 or 40 or whatever.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you said exactly my golden rule when it comes to it, and that is, how much of the base does the model take up, right? If this is the base and the model sits like this,
yeah,
right, then I'm probably going to do these separate, and I'm going to take some serious time thinking about where the model sits on here and what needs to go in all this negative space, right? Because that's going to take some thought. But if this is the base and this is the model, right, and you've got like 2 little corners poking out from under the robe or the armor or whatever, I'm probably going to just affix the model to the base straight away. Like I said, 1 in every 6 or 7, I'll put a rock or 2 on there first, then put the model on top of that, just to, like I said, to create those variations. And then at the end, exactly what you said, you put some of the basing material around the edge, then you paint it, you flock it, you put your tufts on, you grit it up, and you paint it, and you go from there. And I completely agree that it will create that consistency. Don't kill yourself over an individual goblin, right? It's not even going to be noticeable. That's the issue. And if you try to do it and line it up, you actually probably stand more chance of ruining the piece than you do of doing something good, because if he doesn't fit on there properly now, you're going to have to turn him and slap jaw him at weird angles, and all of a sudden your unit of goblins that could be very unified are all like facing off weird directions, and they're like, what's going on with these guys? The battle's over there, guys. Why are 30 of you looking to the left or right, slightly off camera?
They're all distracted by the shiny things.
Well, goblins are probably barely looking in the same direction anyway. So maybe for a goblin army, it would work well. I've got to imagine only 5 or 6 of them are half paying attention. The other ones are all worrying about what some other unit said about them or noticing a funny shaped rock, like whatever.
Someone threw dung at the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when it comes to unit basing, that's exactly it. Now, that consistency is the key. So then that leads me to my last question on this is, so we have the unit, we have it based out, looks good all together, but that unit ain't walking on the table alone, right? There's something it's sitting on, and that's the movement tray.
Yeah.
Now, what's your thought on this? Now, do you go for like just take me through it. What's your movement tray? What's your opinion on that? And how do you like them?
This absolutely depends on what base it is and what army it is. I have made movement trays that were just straight up black. This was for my snow army. I didn't put snow around the edges simply because some of the snow material, right, if you're touching the edges of the base or of the movement tray all the time, which you usually are, that's how I move my models with the movement trays. Even my large models have movement trays so that I don't have to actually pick them up and touch them when I'm playing with them. I knew right away that I was just going to be breaking off snow and going to have to repair those things indefinitely all the time. In broken, busted-ass movement trays look way worse than ones painted black, in my opinion. So those ones I painted black. My Skaven, I actually based the tops of them because that was, cave. You can put mushrooms and stalagmites on there and stuff that are stuff that are on there that's not going to fall off. That stuff's all glued on there nicely. It's not going to get damaged, not going to get mangled. So that stuff I certainly make a cohesive bit with. The other thing that's really nice is I think, especially with your skirmishers, there's a ton of space in there, right? So this is a skirmish movement tray. Why not base this? This is great. I mean, you get a whole little area that you can do some fun stuff with in there on skirmish movement trays. So that's certainly one point that I would definitely spend some extra time is on those areas.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's for some of my units, I'm honestly a fan of a pretty blank movement tray. If we're talking about so for my Skaven slaves, I have a metal movement tray that sits underneath them, and it has no lip, no edge. They go to the edge of it. It's cut exactly to fit 50 Skaven slaves, right? And it's just metal. So no part of it sticks out or shows. And I like that because I just want them to be them. I don't want an edge to them. That's just my own personal taste of kind of the aesthetic I like. When it comes to skirmisher bases, though, I completely agree. With a skirmisher base, you've got all this negative space in between the figs. That's just an opportunity to further build up that mosaic, right? Of what's going on there. You got real space now where you can put some stuff on there, some actual stuff. Some little bits and some flock and some tufts and some rocks and some extra bits, broken weapons, skulls. That's good. It's Warhammer. There's probably skulls everywhere. I mean, that's
not skulls. You're doing it wrong.
Exactly. I mean, that is the key to the Warhammer world. At any given point in time, if you just there are at least 2 skulls within 6 feet of you at any point in time if you're in the Warhammer world. That's a rule. So yeah, there's lots of different stuff you can do for the bases. And the reality is we all have tons of extra bits of that kind. If you've been collecting any kind of an army, you've got extra swords and crossbows and arrows and just garbage that comes on those sprues that you never use, right? Save that stuff and throw it onto your bases. Make it look like scatter some detritus around or whatever. Make it look more like a battlefield.
Yeah. So I'd say my 3 main rules of basing. Add a little bit of texture to the top in terms of whatever you want to do. Your coffee grounds, your just junk. Paint that in whatever color you want, your wood, and then get some color contrast with your tufts of grass or whatever. And then I think my last point is actually what you didn't do on your figure that you were pointing out and laughing at. Paint the edge. I don't care if you want to paint it a brown color or whatever. Paint that edge and make sure it looks very sharp and crisp. I think it really ties. It says the base is done, right? I don't know what it is about it. It just looks clean, looks done. That's the way you want it. So I definitely suggest painting the edges of your bases after you're done basing. Black, whatever color, like I said, brown, whatever color you want to do it. Just make sure it's the same throughout.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, just give, once you're all done, just give that edge of the thing nice little couple rounds over or whatever to make it clear and covered. I mean, chances are it probably got primed with the base or something at that point anyways. Just get it consistent, get them all the same. We're talking about the sides of the base. So if this is your base, it's this piece right here is what we're talking about. Give that a nice consistent color all the way around. Nope. And that's an easy thing to forget because you usually are like, you're ready to celebrate or put the fig to the side or something like that when you're done. But don't forget about it. Yeah, you want it to be done, truly done and consistent. Like I was looking back there at my Skaven, all of them have like the gray. You can probably barely see it on the side because like that's just to complete the stone, right? So it's not just the stone above it; it's all that same slate gray, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think your rules are great. I have no additions for them. I agree completely. That basing for your units makes the unit look done. The difference between a unit that is just sitting on some brown or green painted Citadel bases and a unit that's sitting on a base that is full of basing material, maybe 3 or different 4 kinds, some rocks, some mud, some tufts, flowers, tea leaves, coffee grounds, I don't care, whatever, is night and day. One of them simply looks done, and one of them does not. That is the reality of the thing. And you can absolutely believe that, I mean, if you're the type of person who's concerned with things like paint scores, you can absolutely believe that doing that is going to up your paint score.
And honestly,
like in many tournaments.
Yeah, if you think yourself is not a great painter, let's just say, I'm just gonna put it on a scale for you. Let's say you're a 3 out of 10. You're just not that great at painting. If you finish your bases like we're saying, that's gonna push you up to a 5. That's gonna be an average, decent looking tabletop army just by putting some bases on there. It's gonna look done. It's gonna look so much better than if you just have, you know, a mediocre paint job and no basing, right? I mean, I'm not busting anyone's chops here. It's just the facts. Like, basing brings up the overall model, even simple basing.
Yep, absolutely agreed. And folks, this is easy stuff. You can all do this. And most of it's cheap. Like we said, it's cork. You can get tons of it for a couple bucks. You know, it's some mud or some mixed up glue and coffee grounds and grit and dirt and stuff like that, right? We're not talking about expensive stuff. We're not talking about a lot of time. It's just simple spreading it on the base, you know, priming it over and painting it. Yeah. And like you said, the beautiful part about doing like mud and rocks and all these base texture things, they're supposed to look rough. So the very simplest of techniques, dry brushing, washing, you know, our old friend Liquid Talent, the Agrax Earthshade, it's a great friend, right? You take some mud, you go a dark brown, a mid brown, a light brown, or a bone dry brush, and then you wash that whole thing down with Agrax. Ding, it's going to look like mud. Just
you're good to go.
And that is
the other thing that you can do too is usually what I do is you can even do it this way. If you're just going to do it quick, fast, you get your thing just like he was saying, paint it your one color brown very quickly, a couple very uneven strokes of your yellowy color, your mustard yellow color, and then take your strokes the other way unevenly of your light brown color, and then just wash that. And what's going to do is make different color mud in there too, so you don't just have to have straight brown. You know, add a little yellowage in there, and just those 3 little steps, and you will have done complete bases that look great. And then you add your tufts to that, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's a great. The point about coloration is a really nice one. A thing that I know I'm guilty of, because it's the easy thing to fall back on doing, but the thing I know I should do less, and I've been trying to work on, is what I'll call breaking GRS, gray rock syndrome, right? A gray rock, a slate rock is such an easy thing to do. It's like a dark gray, light gray dry brush, white dry brush. Maybe you wash it down in black somewhere in there, right? And that's a rock. It's a gray granite rock. Like, and I've seen rocks like that in the world. Those exist. It's just actually that's pretty rare to have a straight gray rock, a completely inorganic rock, right? What can really make that pop and be more realistic is to wash in some dark greens, some dark browns, some dark purples, even some reds in places, right? Depending on how you do it. All the, like, get some life, some color on those rocks, and they will, those gray granite rocks will look like they're full of moss, organic material. Go and look close at like any rock sitting near your yard the next time if you live near mountains or stuff. There's not a lot that's just pure slate, right? Like there's organic material on them.
Yeah.
Weathering, dirt, moss, lichen, whatever. And that kind of stuff does that. Because at that, a miniature is at such a small scale, a lot of that organic material wouldn't actually even be physically visible. So the wash with a rough texture can actually sort of communicate that that's at the right scale, right? As opposed to it having physical form.
Yeah. Anything left to add about simple basing?
I don't think so. Do it. That would be my final thing. Just do it. Like Nike told you in the 90s, just do it. Be like Michael Jordan and just do it, right?
I think that's how he got famous. Basing Warhammer miniatures, right?
Basing Warhammer minis. Yeah, I mean, it was right behind all those titles. It was like 1 titles, 2 basing Warhammer minis,
He played tennis, right?
3 Space Jam. Like that was, well, I mean, really, he got famous for being a movie star in Space Jam, as we all know. The movie that truly catapulted Michael Jordan to financial success. Yes. All right.
So do we have any comments or questions before
Let
we
me take a look.
move along?
Let me take a look. No, we do not. We have no comments or questions today. All right. Apparently people are okay with what we're telling them. They're happy with it. That being said, I didn't specifically say comments or questions, so all the people watching us right now probably didn't know to leave anything. But if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them now, or put them in the comments and we'll answer them after the show. That's okay too. So there you go. With that away, shall we move to determining the challenge for 2 weeks from now?
Next challenge.
All right, it's
Another show down. Next challenge. Just moving along.
There you go.
Play cabinet is slowly filling.
Am I rolling, or are you rolling today?
I don't have a D10, so you're rolling.
All right, that's fine. I have my trusty orange D10 of fate, the D10 of destiny. But since I believe I read them last time, I think it's your turn to read the topics this time.
Topics. I can tell you what's not in my display case. The speed painting challenge. I'll tell you that is not in there.
It didn't even make the display case. You're just like, nope.
It's waiting in my drawer to be repainted. That's what it's doing. All right. So our challenges are currently from 1 to 10, a basing challenge. So this will be, tying with what we just talked about, but this will be a more diorama style, very, very characterful, very, very over the top base would be this basing challenge. Freehand capes. So we're going to do some freehand on capes. Number 3, a unit filler. Though in the age of Sigmar, we're not sure if we're going to need those anymore, but unit fillers are fun, so a unit filler. Number 4, F this color. So we're going to paint something yellow, because yellow is usually a problem color. Number 5, gems. Painting gems and big gems, small gems, whatever. Number 6, painting pure white, another color that tends to give people trouble. Number 7, object source lighting. So we're going to do a piece where, your sun is just not coming down, something else is giving off light. Number 8, true metallic metal. So we did non-metallic metal already. This would be using your actual metallic paints. Number 9, painting a unit is what I added. And by unit in parentheses. So we're going to add some tips and topics for what we do for, we painted a bunch of single models. What do we do when we paint more than just a single model? So in my head, this was a challenge for, basically pick up a box, 10 unit of 10 infantry or unit of 5 cavalry, something that comes in a box as a unit per se, and paint that. And then number 10, that big mother. So painting challenge for something that's on a chariot base or larger.
Love it. I wouldn't mind that one. Now let me ask you a question. If we roll to paint a unit, how many do I have to paint to crush your soul? Like if normally when I do 2 or 3, like if I paint 50 in a single
I'm
sitting.
going to tell you what, Vince. We're going to do it this way. The only thing you can paint in 2 weeks is that one box of figures.
Oh, that is unacceptable.
All you're allowed to paint. Those 5 or 10 models.
I have to go find the biggest box.
Flip it around. We're going to put Vince in his own hell torture chamber. He gets like 3 models, and that's all he can paint for like a month. Vince would be in there. He'd be like, ah!
Unacceptable. Yeah, this is like my lightest month so far because I was on the road for 12 or 13 days, and then I'm about to leave
I
again.
don't know why. I just
Near the end of the
imagine
month.
sitting there like driving through Kentucky with your knee and then like painting something on the dashboard.
Just like got a water cup, India
Yeah.
in a cup holder.
like
Yeah,
like
sure.
a crack fiend driving through, just like painting. He's like, I must paint something, and
Hit a pothole and just oh
you come
no.
home, the interior of your wife's car is just painted murals, like the ceiling is just Da Vinci painted.
I have a problem. All right. So yes, no. I mean, yeah. Obviously, I got my big Chimera Geist done. I was happy to see him finish, but and I got some snakes that are almost done. There you go, snake.
Nice. I like those snakes. Those are probably my favorite Tomb King models.
Yeah, they're beautiful. If we get the True Metallic Challenge, I'll talk about another new thing that I picked up while I was on the trip.
Liquid gold.
That's right. Yes, that is correct. All right. So shall we? D10 of Fate. Here we go. I will roll. What? Wheel of Fate. Turn, turn, turn. All right. Here we go. I think we got what you just replaced it with. I think. I don't know. Number 7.
Oh, 7 is not what I replaced. I replaced 9.
Okay.
Number 7 is object source lighting.
Oh God. Didn't we just do this?
I feel like you just did that.
All right. The die of fate cannot be questioned. Object source lighting it is.
All right.
All right. So OSL. Here's a fun thing. Why don't we? Do you think we could do 2 pieces? And for one of them we use some airbrush for OSL, and for another one we use some painting for OSL, or maybe a mix. Or maybe we just think about that, because like a lot of people use airbrush for OSL, and there are challenges and easy pitfalls with that. So I think that's definitely something we should talk about.
I think we should leave that as talk about. Let's see what we come up with. Yeah. See what we come up with. See what we did, and see what we like and don't like.
There you go. Absolutely. I like that. I don't like that.
I can tell you, we could also find a couple examples of what object source lighting with an airbrush should not look like pretty easily.
Yes. It would be very easy to find that. That I am sure of, because I have seen a lot of those pictures. All right. So
while some of those look cool, they are not really object source lighting.
right. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. That's an awesome comment. So John said, if we rolled the unit, my solution should be Vince will just pick up a battalion box. I like it, John. Way to think outside the box, buddy.
No.
That counts. That's a box. It's 1 box.
Look, guys, I painted a dark elf army. Shut up, Vince. Go in your home.
I will pick up the Age of Sigmar box. That's 1 box, right? That's okay. That counts.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, folks, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it, as always. If you have any comments or questions or anything about we talked about today, warm and cold, basing, and then eventually OSL, what we'll do what you'll see in 2 weeks, don't hesitate to put them in the comment section below. I will link last week's show, as always, in the comments, and I'll also credit the painter who did that amazing warm and cold piece.
All right, so
Paul, any closing thoughts?
closing thoughts. I actually do have one thing. This puts us on Friday the 19th. Our next show would be the 3rd of July.
Yes.
This puts us over a holiday weekend, which is totally fine. I should be okay with that. But what I'm pointing at is that Age of Sigmar pre-release should be the 4th.
That is true.
So do we want to forego choosing a challenge after that and simply go with, let's paint some Age of Sigmar stuff for the following episode?
I like it. I like it. That's a real cliffhanger for our viewers here who've hung on to the end. I'm going to say yes, let's do that.
All right, so I think you can actually get stuff on the 11th, is what I'm understanding. So then our show on the 17th would be Age of Sigmar.
Yes, we'll have 6 days. That should be more than enough time. That's 5 days more than I need.
Yeah, and I'll take all the vacation time I have.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for watching, guys.
See you then.